Last time you spoke to Hulk Hogan?
I don't know. He betrayed me.
Jesse the Body Ventura accused him of the ultimate betrayal, calling out his actions as the kind of disloyalty that cuts the deepest and leaves a lasting mark.
Can't believe that Hulk Hogan would do this.
To Bret the Hitman Hart, he was accused of outright career sabotage, with claims that his actions held back opportunities and damaged Hart's path in the wrestling world.
I do not have any respect for him to this day. And I would like to like the guy, but I don't have any respect for him. You know, I believe he's not a real person. You know? I think everything's a facade with Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan may be a legend to fans, but to many fellow wrestlers, he is seen as the villain. Here are 10 WWE stars who openly despise him, and their reasons are more shocking than you might expect. Doink the Clown, also known as Matt Bourne, is the first on this list. Bourne, better known as the original Doink the Clown, had serious personal grievances with Hogan that went far beyond the ring. At first, it may seem strange that a clown character would have issues with the iconic Hulk Hogan, but Matt Bourne's problems with him ran much deeper than simple wrestling storylines.
Give a about Hogan.
15 minutes on it.
I didn't care. You know, I never put him over when he was around. I never even went out of my way to talk to him.
Bourne accused Hogan of being fake and mistreating people backstage, saying he could never respect him or even look him in the eye because of his hypocrisy. In the wrestling world, respect means everything, and when another wrestler says they can't even make eye contact with you because of how you act, that is one of the harshest criticisms possible. Bourne's words suggest that Hogan's behavior behind the scenes was so different from his public image that it left those working with him genuinely disgusted.
This is the same guy who says that he took wrestling out of the smoke-filled little back alley, whatever he called it, to mainstream. You know, before this idiot, and I'll call him an idiot, came into the scene, there was an Argentino Rocca who was wrestling in Madison Square Garden, and all the other big...
The hypocrisy that Bourne pointed out likely came from Hogan's image as an all-American hero who preached training, prayers, and vitamins, while allegedly living in the opposite way behind the curtain. For someone like Matt Bourne, who valued authenticity even while performing as a clown character, this kind of two-faced behavior was especially upsetting. What makes his criticism more believable is that he was not a main event star or someone chasing championship glory, so jealousy or lost opportunities were not his motives. His dislike for Hogan came purely from what he saw of Hogan's character and behavior as both a person and a coworker. At number 9, we move to one of the most respected figures in WWE history, Bruno Sammartino, the man who carried the company for over a decade with 2 legendary WWE Championship reigns that together lasted more than 11 years. Sammartino openly disliked Hogan's cartoonish style, believing it overshadowed traditional wrestling, and he accused him of playing ego-driven politics. He even refused to accept a Hall of Fame induction until the Hogan era had passed. When Hogan returned with his Hollywood persona and entertainment-first approach, it symbolized everything Sammartino believed was destroying the true spirit of professional wrestling.
They talk about the wonderful things he did to this business by being one of the wonderful steroid chemical robots that came to this business, which is an unfortunate and tragic thing because there have been a lot of deaths, drug-related.
The most powerful sign of Sammartino's dislike for Hogan was his refusal to enter the WWE Hall of Fame while Hogan was still a major figure in the company. Just think about that. Bruno Sammartino, the man who helped build WWE into what it became, turned down the company's highest honor because he couldn't stand being linked to what Hogan represented. For Bruno, wrestling was never just entertainment, it was a true athletic competition that deserved respect. He came from an era where wrestlers were seen as real athletes who could handle themselves in any situation, and Hogan's flashy character work combined with his limited in-ring skills was the opposite of those values. For Sammartino, that was something he simply could not accept.
My real name is Terry Bollea, my real name is Randy Poffo, and he disrespected me and my family through the media.
But Bruno's problems with Hogan went far beyond stylistic differences. He was especially critical of Hogan's ego-driven politics and how he used his influence to protect his own spot while possibly holding back more deserving wrestlers. Coming From a man who had willingly given up the WWE Championship multiple times to help elevate new talent, this criticism carried serious weight. Sammartino's immigrant background also shaped how he viewed what it meant to be a true American hero. Having come to the United States from Italy as a child, he built his legacy on hard work, determination, and genuine heroism. When he looked at Hogan, he didn't see those values. He saw someone playing a role rather than living authentically, and that lack of honesty disturbed him deeply. The respect Sammartino commanded in the wrestling world made his criticism even more powerful, because when a man often considered the greatest WWE champion of all time refuses to share a Hall of Fame with you, it sends a clear message about your character and reputation among your peers. At number 8, we have one of wrestling's most heartbreaking stories of friendship that turned into bitter hatred, Randy Macho Man Savage. Savage carried resentment over personal issues involving Miss Elizabeth, accusing Hogan of crossing the line. While they eventually reconciled before Savage's death in 2011, he spent years publicly attacking Hogan through interviews and even rap songs, making his anger toward the Hulkster very clear.
The situation with me and Hulk Hogan is just, we've been acquaintances at best, never been best friends, never been
The personal issues involving Miss Elizabeth that created a divide between Savage and Hogan have fueled wrestling speculation for decades. Although the exact details were never fully confirmed, many believe that Hogan crossed personal boundaries, with Savage's real-life wife and on-screen manager, leading to a rift that would shape both men's careers in the years that followed.
You see what I'm saying? He goes on the airwaves and he disrespects me. He gives me a shot over the radio, gives me a shot over the TV, he gives me a shot over the internet, here and there, but nothing faced.
The tragedy of the Savage-Hogan relationship was that their huge professional success in the late 1980s hid the personal tensions that were building between them. As the Mega Powers, they created one of WWE's most successful storylines, but behind the curtain, their friendship was falling apart. Not because of wrestling angles, but because of real-life personal conflicts that they could never fully overcome.
Put Hulk Hogan in the Royal Rumble, I'll throw his dust over the top rope, and I'll kill Hulkamania once and for all.
The reconciliation that took place before Savage's death in 2011 added another layer of complexity to their story. Hogan's Hall of Fame induction speech for Savage was filled with real emotion and regret, showing that despite everything that had come between them, both men ultimately wanted to mend their friendship. Still, the years of bitterness had already left deep scars. Savage's refusal to return to WWE for so long was partly linked to his problems with Hogan, and their failure to settle things professionally cost both men opportunities and potential earnings. Their story stands as a cautionary tale of how the wrestling business can tear apart even the strongest friendships when egos, money, and personal issues get in the way. At number 7, we have CM Punk, the outspoken straight-edge superstar, known for never holding back when it came to wrestling's biggest names. Punk openly called Hogan a piece of garbage and even said, "forget him" in interviews, going as far as to mention him negatively in his famous 2011 pipe bomb promo. His dislike for Hogan only grew after meeting him in person and learning more about his many scandals.
As good as kissing Vince's Hulk Hogan was.
Punk's famous pipe bomb promo in 2011 took a direct shot at Hogan, using him as an example of everything wrong with WWE's corporate culture and the way it built its stars. This wasn't just a scripted moment disguised as reality. It was Punk's genuine frustration with how the company operated and how legends like Hogan were celebrated while current wrestlers doing the real work were often overlooked and undervalued.
I got beat my first, match after turning heel. The call was made by Hulk Hogan to have me beat.
What made Punk's criticism especially damaging was that it came from someone who had no personal history with Hogan during his prime. Punk's dislike only grew after meeting Hogan and hearing about his scandals, showing that his negative opinion was based on Hogan's actions and reputation rather than personal grudges or professional rivalries. Punk's straight-edge lifestyle also clashed with Hogan's approach to the wrestling business. As someone who valued honesty and authenticity, Punk was naturally disgusted by what he saw as Hogan's dishonesty and manipulation. The contrast between Punk's strict stance against drugs and alcohol and Hogan's later admissions of steroid use made Hogan's behavior even more offensive to him. The timing of Punk's harshest comments also lined up with some of Hogan's biggest scandals, including the racism controversy, which for someone like Punk, who had always positioned himself as socially aware and progressive, was completely unacceptable. His words carried even more weight because he had already main evented WrestleMania and held the WWE Championship for over 400 days. This wasn't bitterness from someone who failed to reach the top. It was judgment from a proven champion who still found Hogan's behavior impossible to defend. At number 6, we have Scott Steiner, the genetically gifted powerhouse whose hatred for Hulk Hogan was just as intense as his larger-than-life personality. Steiner openly called Hogan a racist and much worse during shoot interviews, pointing out Hogan's induction of Randy Savage, whom Steiner claimed despised Hogan, and recalling threatening run-ins at airports. Their shared history in WCW only fueled this animosity, as Steiner saw firsthand how Hogan operated behind the scenes. Known for never holding back his words, Steiner became one of Hogan's loudest and most consistent critics, delivering brutal assessments that left no doubt about his true feelings.
When another wrestler decides he's going to decide who wins is both.
Why do you think he did that?
He's a motherfucker. There's no other way you can say it. He's a piece of shit.
Steiner's labeling of Hogan as a racist and much worse was not just casual trash talk. It was a serious accusation coming from someone who had worked closely with Hogan during some of the most successful and controversial years of their careers. What made his criticism stand out even more was his mention of Randy Savage's feelings toward Hogan. Steiner claimed that Savage hated Hogan, and given his close friendship with Savage, he would have been in a position to know the truth about their relationship. This gave Steiner's attacks extra weight, as he wasn't only speaking from his own experience, but also echoing the sentiments of other wrestlers who had dealt with Hogan. The Big Bad Booty Daddy's criticism also came from his personal struggles, trying to break into the main event scene in WCW. While Hogan kept a tight grip on the spotlight, Steiner, who had legitimate amateur wrestling credentials and unmatched physical ability, was left feeling frustrated by what he saw as Hogan's undeserved dominance at the top. His decision to keep attacking Hogan years after WCW had ended proved that this was more than just professional jealousy. It was real personal dislike built on years of first-hand experiences. The fact that Steiner continued calling Hogan out in interviews and shoot videos long after their paths had separated showed that his feelings hadn't faded with time and were rooted in deep resentment.
After I lost my belt to him, Mr. Howard, he come in the locker room. He said, "Shicky baby, I love you. I owe you one." And after that, he never returned my call.
Steiner's accusations that Hogan was a racist proved to be strikingly accurate after Hogan's racist comments were exposed in the 2015 tape scandal. This made it seem as though Steiner may have known about Hogan's true attitudes long before. The public did, giving his earlier criticism even more credibility in hindsight. At number 5, we have the Iron Sheik, whose hatred for Hulk Hogan became legendary thanks to his unfiltered presence on social media. Sheik often tweeted about Hogan, blasting him for his ego and racism, which he linked back to their 1984 feud and the real-life clashes that followed. His disdain for Hogan remained loud, raw, and very public right up until his death.
I don't like Hulk Hogan himself.
The Iron Sheik's famous tweets about Hulk Hogan became a recurring theme on his social media, delivered with the same fire and conviction that he once brought to his wrestling persona. Their 1984 feud was meant to be the springboard for Hulkamania, with Sheik losing to establish Hogan as the ultimate all-American hero. But behind the curtain, their relationship was far more complicated than the simple good versus evil storyline fans saw on TV. What made Sheik's hatred so fascinating was that it blended both professional and personal grievances. The ego and racism he accused Hogan of weren't vague insults. They were sharp, specific claims rooted in years of working with Hogan and witnessing his behavior both inside and outside the ring.
You and Hulk were once good friends.
Yeah.
What's the likelihood of that ever being repaired?
Never.
What?
Can't trust him. I'm not friends with anyone I don't trust. I have to have a trust with someone to be their friend. And he's the one that ratted me to Vince when I tried to unionize.
The social media side of Iron Sheik's hatred for Hogan was especially entertaining because it showed how old-school wrestling grudges had adapted to modern times. Instead of settling things in the ring or behind closed doors, Sheik used Twitter as his battleground, turning their decades-old feud into a running public commentary. What made his criticism stand out was the consistency. This wasn't a short-term beef or a publicity stunt. It was a genuine dislike that he voiced repeatedly. Over many years, right up until his death, his accusations of racism carried even more weight because of his own experiences as an Iranian-American wrestler who was often cast as the foreign villain, giving his perspective a credibility rooted in personal history. Sheik's hatred also reflected the complicated relationships of wrestling's territorial era, where wrestlers often worked together in the ring while privately harboring real animosity. The fact that his conflict with Hogan endured long after both men had retired proved just how deep their issues went. At number 4, we have Jesse "The Body" Ventura, whose hatred for Hogan came from what he saw as the ultimate betrayal of wrestler solidarity. Ventura accused Hogan of snitching to Vince McMahon about his 1986 unionization efforts, which led to threats of firings. In interviews and even in his book, Ventura labeled Hogan a backstabber and a narcissist, cementing his resentment for years to come.
I didn't show any emotion, but I almost tipped over in the chair because he was my friend. And I thought, but then I understand why. When we went to court, I saw in WrestleMania 3, Hogan got paid more than all of us combined. Now, why would he want a union when he's getting taken care of?
The 1986 unionization effort led by Ventura had the potential to completely reshape the wrestling business, offering wrestlers health care, retirement plans, and basic worker protections that are still missing today. Ventura had rallied the locker room before WrestleMania 2, but according to him, Hogan informed McMahon, who then threatened firings to crush the movement. This wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was a decision that may have cost every wrestler in the company millions of dollars in benefits and security over the following decades. What made it worse was that Ventura didn't even learn of Hogan's role until years later during his 1991 lawsuit against McMahon over royalties, when testimony revealed Hogan's involvement. That meant Ventura had to live with the long-term consequences of the failed union drive for years before finally discovering who had been responsible for undermining it.
If you start working with WWE again, would you consider burying the hatchet with Hulk Hogan?
No,
Conversation at least?
I don't know.
When was the last time you spoke to Hulk Hogan?
I don't know. He betrayed me.
What made Hogan's betrayal especially glaring was the reason behind it. Ventura pointed out that Hogan was making more money than the entire WrestleMania 3 roster combined, yet instead of standing with his peers to secure basic benefits, he chose to protect his own paycheck and actively blocked efforts that could have helped everyone. For Ventura, this was more than selfish, it was deeply offensive. As a former military man and someone who later entered politics, Ventura understood the value of solidarity and collective action. His time with the Screen Actors Guild during his role in Predator had already shown him how unions could protect performers, which made Hogan's sabotage even harder to accept. The consequences of Hogan's decision were massive and long-lasting. Wrestling is still non-unionized to this day, and many point to this moment as a major reason why. Every wrestler who has struggled without health care, every veteran performer who has faced retirement without a pension, and every talent who has been exploited by promoters can trace at least part of their struggles back to Hogan's role in killing Ventura's union effort.
To know that I was going to drop this belt back and what was going on. I mean, that came up out of nowhere. But I kind of figured like, oh, okay, maybe it's because he's telling everybody that I hurt him, Hulk was still the guy.
The fact that Ventura never reconciled with Hogan and even recently criticized him for appearing at Trump rallies shows that this was never just a temporary disagreement. Ventura's continued condemnation decades later proves that he saw Hogan's betrayal as something beyond forgiveness. At number 3, we have The Undertaker, whose revelation about Hogan's dishonesty sent shockwaves through the wrestling world. Undertaker explained that in 1991, Hogan lied about suffering a neck injury from a tombstone piledriver as a way to avoid losing, calling it a betrayal that broke trust between them. He has since spoken about this in podcasts, pointing to it as a clear example of Hogan's obsession with self-preservation.
Terry, I watched it back your head never hit. He's like, well, brother, what it was you had me so tight that when we came down, I had nowhere to move. And that's what jammed my neck, because I couldn't move at all.
The Undertaker's revelation about Hogan's deception stands as one of the most damaging accusations ever made against the Hulkster, largely because it came from one of the most respected figures in wrestling. When The Undertaker speaks, the industry pays attention, and his account of Hogan's dishonesty carried tremendous weight. The incident at Tuesday in Texas in 1991 was supposed to be a routine spot, with The Undertaker delivering his tombstone, piledriver. But according to him, Hogan lied about suffering a neck injury as a way to avoid losing, using a fabricated excuse to protect his character and championship status. What made this betrayal especially painful for The Undertaker was the timing. It happened early in his WWE career, when he was still trying to prove himself as a main event star. Having the company's biggest name accuse him of causing a serious injury could have badly hurt his credibility and even derailed his rise to the top.
It was everything in wrestling, and that everyone else we were all backup players to Hulk Hogan, and that's the way he saw it. And once that belt was on me, I became the enemy, or somebody that had to be removed.
The Undertaker felt especially betrayed when Hogan later admitted that his claim of a neck injury had nothing to do with safety or health. It was simply a political move to protect his spot at the top, especially with rising stars like The Rock on the horizon. What made this so damaging was how it could have hurt The Undertaker's reputation as a safe worker. In professional wrestling, being seen as someone who injures opponents can ruin a career, and Hogan's false accusation could have stained The Undertaker's standing with both management and fellow wrestlers. This revelation also exposed how Hogan's instinct for self-preservation often came at the expense of his colleagues' careers and reputations. While he was busy protecting his own character and storylines, others were left to deal with the fallout, including unnecessary drama and damage to their credibility. At number 2, we have Shawn Michaels, whose 2005 feud with Hogan became legendary for all the wrong reasons. What should have been a dream match between two of wrestling's biggest stars turned into a showcase of professional frustration and personal animosity. Michaels wanted a multi-match series where each man would trade victories, but Hogan allegedly refused to lose more than once. In response, Michaels mocked him in the ring, overselling Hogan's offense with exaggerated bumps and dramatic reactions, turning the match into one of the most entertaining displays of pettiness in wrestling history. This wasn't just Michaels being unprofessional, it was a deliberate artistic statement about Hogan's ego and limited wrestling ability. Every over-the-top fall was Michaels' way of saying that if Hogan wanted to be treated like a true main event star, he needed to act like one. The frustration was compounded by the fact that Michaels was in a phase of his career where he was helping younger talent rise, while Hogan, long past his prime, refused to do the same. Their backstage tension reflected a larger problem in WWE at the time: the struggle to respect legends while still building new stars, with Hogan unwilling to embrace his role as a returning veteran. And finally, at number 1, we have Bret the Hitman Hart, whose relentless criticism of Hogan stands as perhaps the most thorough takedown ever delivered by a fellow wrestler. Hart has repeatedly called Hogan a phony and accused him of sabotaging his career, including refusing to drop the WWF Championship to him after WrestleMania 9. In his autobiography and countless interviews, Hart ripped Hogan's in-ring skills, famously saying he didn't know a headlock from a headlamp, and accused him of holding grudges while influencing poor booking decisions in WCW. Hart's words cut especially deep because they came not just from bitterness, but from years of first-hand experience working with Hogan both in and out of the ring.
Pissed off. I'm so mad. I can't believe that Hulk Hogan would do this to me. Like, I was a guy that always thought of him as a friend, and vice versa. And this, I know I worked really hard to finally climb up that ladder to get to that spot. I worked so hard, and here he was, stopped.
Bret Hart's hatred for Hulk Hogan is perhaps the most well-documented and detailed criticism ever made against the Hulkster by another wrestler. Hart's attacks were never just emotional rants or passing grudges. They were carefully laid out indictments built on years of professional dealings and personal observation. The WrestleMania 9 incident, which Hart often pointed to, summed up everything he believed was wrong with Hogan's approach to the business. After Hart had gone through a tough match with Yokozuna and lost the WWE Championship, Hogan allegedly persuaded Vince McMahon to change the ending, inserting himself into the main event to win the title in just minutes. For Hart, this wasn't simply about losing the belt. It was about Hogan's blatant disregard for storytelling, fairness, and logic. Hart also claimed that Hogan promised to drop the championship back to him later, but backed out, using his influence backstage to avoid putting Hart over while leaving him looking weak in the process. His famous line that Hogan didn't know a headlock from a headlamp became one of wrestling's most quoted insults, perfectly expressing Hart's belief that Hogan's wrestling skills were wildly overrated compared to his star power and backstage politics. But Hart's criticism didn't stop at Hogan's in-ring ability. He also accused Hogan of trying to frame him as just a tag team wrestler in private conversations, an effort to damage Hart's credibility as a singles star, despite his proven talent and long list of accomplishments.